Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to see you via the new normal, as it is at the moment, via Zoom, via online video. And I think we'll, as I'm sure a lot of us are now realising, is going to sort of be the way that communicating and doing sort of what I do in the world of broadcasting and events and corporate events. It's another way now in which, for the foreseeable future, I think certainly until the end of the year, but I think perhaps this is also going to birth a whole new way of doing things as well, you know, where logistics can be an issue. So I'm really pleased to be able to work with performing artists and you as well, hopefully moving forwards, to perhaps looking at other ways on how we can maximize this industry, how we can innovate, how we can bring what we've historically had face to face, which there will always be a place for that, how to turn a pandemic into a positive. So TV is in my blood, it's in my bones from being a kids TV presenter from the age of 17. I'm going to be 40 next year, just to throw that one in there. I can't even believe that, I know. In a nutshell, and all the books showcase this, I was a #1 kids TV presenter, #1 show called Toonatic back in 2006, when I had an emotional breakdown. There's a huge backstory attached to that. Through a lot of help, seeking talking therapies, it opened up my eyes and my world to it. And there's a lot of people in this industry will attest. You're often at the beholden to this industry for earning your bread and butter. And I wanted to do something else for me, which was studying therapy. So I squirreled away behind the scenes, and because I was interested in it, and I started learning about counselling and studying and neurolinguistic programming and a range of different therapy techniques. And I started doing that in 2009, and I'm now qualified and certified and accredited in various disciplines in counselling, neurolinguistic programming, life coaching, and it's something that I really now apply to my work. So mental health and emotional well-being, goal setting, stress management is something that I offer up to companies by way of keynote speaking and corporate events. So I hope that's a little bit of a potted history on where I am right now.
Thank you, and thank you for your honesty as well. With the obviously, it can be hard to admit to when you've had failings, and failings is the wrong word. When you've had challenges. And
failings is fine, and I think you make a really good point already with that, JJ. I think people, and a lot of what I do is stigma busting, really, and myth busting, and making people feel it's okay to speak as it feels and not have to worry or check themselves about what language or words they're using, because you're quite right. And actually, a lot of what I do about is the importance of failure or perceived failure.
I was going to say that I see very much a parallel between what we've been going through with lockdown, and obviously we went through the initial stages of, speaking personally, shock and denial, actually. How do you see people adapting to that and the challenges which people have faced?
Sure. And I think now, we know there's a mental health epidemic that has now just blown up. And interestingly, I haven't even told you this yet, JJ, but I'm working on what is the biggest neuroscience convention in the world ever, which is taking place in July with FENS. Because all the neuroscientists in the world are now studying the fallout, which is now already apparent as a result of this pandemic. Forgive me, I'm not exactly, I think it's 93% of companies have confirmed, have said that their workforce have reported increased feelings of stress, loneliness, isolation, financial worry, depression, low mood, as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. So a lot of the work I've been doing since lockdown, in particular around mental health and well-being, have been around relationship challenges. We know that that's an enormous one. Parenting challenges. I mean, these are huge core parts of our lives. So yeah, parenting, relationship, working, financial, and then mental health. I mean, we are undoubtedly now moving into a phase where, particularly for the younger generation as well, but for all of us, anxiety has absolutely increased, health anxiety. We are feeling the pressure. We have all realized We are immortal. We're not immortal, shall I say. And I don't think in our generation we've ever had that. So how that translated to my work was we had to reinvent pretty much overnight. What can we do about this? The absolute increase that I had in my own personal inboxes, from charities, from companies, from television, from corporate companies I had already initially got other work, potentially that I do, was hugely focused on mental support, mental health and emotional support for all demographics within all those areas I've just spoken about. Parenting demographics, existing mental health issues that people had were exacerbated. I suffer GAD, I have generalized anxiety disorder, and I manage it very well. I have done for a very long time. And yet that moment will be etched in my brain forever, when Boris was on the telly telling everyone that first time that lockdown was now happening. For someone that suffers with anxiety and they have an ingrained, fight or flight is absolutely there. The first thing you want to do when someone tells you can't do something is you want to get the hell out of there, and to have that on such an enormous scale for millions of people suffering with mental health issues, already it was catastrophic. But what we've now also seen, and this is absolute fact, which is why so much work is now going to it over the rest of the year, and certainly will be for the next couple of years, is to catch every single person that has been affected mentally and emotionally, which everybody has been, because everyone has their own story, by this pandemic. And this is where I believe that corporate companies, any company, doesn't have to be corporate company, any company, any workforce, any workplace, any charity, can then step up and go, how can I best support my team, my families, wherever I work, what can I best do? And what I've already done is by getting people like myself on board to go, right, let's tackle this, let's address this, let's work on it, and let's give some practical solutions, self-help solutions, because a lot of people have never experienced ill mental health until now.
Tell us a bit about the sorts of speeches you have done with clients, but how you see them developing. Yeah,
so I did a corporate event for a client that rethought the wheel, and I'm really pleased they did. And instead of having a live face-to-face event, which was a mental health and well-being event, lots of companies, quite rightly, as part of the time to change movement, of recognizing how important it is to support your workers' mental health.
I failed to mention at the beginning, actually, an ambassador for Childline, and I know you've done counselling for them both on the phones and online.
Yeah, the pandemic, absolutely, at Childline. I've been a key spokesperson and ambassador for Childline, and I'm a trained Childline counsellor as well, as you say, on the phones and online. Actually, online interactions now with counselling has actually overtaken on the phones, just such as the way of technology and how young people like to interact. But yeah, there's been an enormous spike of young people that are contacting Childline, which, and it's an interesting point you mentioned, actually, because I've just been working with NSPCC and Childline, who are the same company now. Mental health and emotional well-being is, I think it's in the top 10 of issues that they present. Well, it's number one for a start, but 5 of those are in the top 10 relate to mental health and well-being. So low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, stress, slow mood, all of those kinds of things, where I think historically people have always seen Childline as, abuse, which obviously is a part of Childline, and we have sadly seen an increase in that with families in lockdown as well. But with young people translating through to adults as well, absolutely, there are huge parallels always.
Are there any, I hate the word silver bullet because there is never silver bullets, but are there any sort of key exercises or easy sort of takeaways, if you will, which people should be thinking about?
A walk. Taking breaks in the day, structuring your day is super important, and reframing your day. Taking time off, being unavailable is really key. And I think this is also a huge problem we're having as a result of lockdown, is because a lot of us are working from home. There is no excuse. Where else are we going to be? So it feels like, and I know a lot of people are now feeling pressure from their companies. Well, why haven't you responded to an email at 10 p.m. at night? Because you're obviously at home. But again, I do a lot of work with companies about setting those boundaries, because it has to start at the top. Unless your boss says, I don't want you to be answering emails after 7 o'clock at night, you will feel that pressure. You will feel that pressure to keep performing. But what I don't believe anyone has properly started to address yet, it's something that I'm starting to do because I recognize the issue, is how we now work with that new normal, but with those boundaries. Because being on your phone or email or watching the telly and your screen time's been 8 hours a day, we're going to find ourselves in even more trouble because we're having to rethink things. So there's lots of tips and things that I give people, but breathing is also a massive, massive part of maintaining. And I'm a big fan of mindfulness as well.
I think everyone has accepted we're not going to go back to the ways we were before. There is going to be a huge amount more home working, even if it's part-time.
Completely. And also I think there's a lot of people that have been campaigning for flexi working for a very long time, and I actually don't see how we can go back to before in a positive way, because I think we've all proved it does work. We can make it work, we can, and actually there is an enormous positivity from this. We work factory hours from back in the day. You know, the whole 9 to 5 hour thing was a factory thing. It hasn't translated and it hasn't evolved into 2020. You know, if we think about it now, we've all been benefited, and I say benefited, from 10 weeks, so, or whatever it is now, of not doing the daily commute. This is for most of us, obviously. I don't know about you, but how bonkers does it feel and sound that for 5 days a week, the majority, millions of people cram themselves on roads, public transport between the hours of 7 and 9 a.m. and then between the hours of 5 and 7 p.m. You know, it like cattle herding across the country. Why?
I just want to touch on you co-host a very popular podcast, and in fact we're due to do some theatre shows this spring, which of course have been kiboshed. But I was fascinated. We were chatting earlier, but you were saying you've moved them to you actually moved the events online and actually did them as pay-per-view online shows. Tell us a bit about that and how it went.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're so pleased that we managed to innovate, and this is the thing. So we were kind of a week into lockdown, and we could see. So I host or co-host a bizarrely popular podcast. I don't know why people seem to like it. We now have over, I think last count was about 6.5 million listeners, and it's regularly the number ones in the Apple charts as well. And in fact, actually, we were nominated for a British Podcast Award. It's called Luana the Podcast. It's just a bit of prattle. It's with my friend Louisa Zisman, who famously was on The Apprentice, and she's a very divisive character. We are like the Jekyll and Hyde. So we were thinking about it. We were like, well, why don't we do a bit of a taster session, a bit of a taster tour, you know, online? So we played with it. We thought, well, everyone's doing them on, you know, for free on Instagram Live and Facebook Live, you know, and that's great. But then this is where, I mean, psychology is what I do, what I love to do. And I said, I don't know about you. I said, and I speak for all of us here, and please be honest, maybe it's just me, but I thought there's so many, it just saturated so quickly. And I thought, I can't keep up with the amount of people offering free tutorials, free workouts, free this, free that. I sort of didn't really care. And there's a reason for that, because our psychology says, well, we don't invest in something, even if it's £1, we don't care. We're not interested. And the best way of doing that was having a paywall behind it. And that wasn't just an mercenary, or let's earn loads of money and take advantage of the situation. But if I'm completely honest, as a result of it, we were working with our freelancers who all work with us on our Luana the podcast. They all had no work either. So we thought, if there's a way that we can keep them floating, and not having to be furloughed, then we'll do it. So we worked with one of our production companies, and we created a pay-per-view event. And the psychology behind that as well is that people have FOMO, fear of missing out. You needed to buy a ticket. We've set the price wall at $3.99, which was what we felt was fair when it came. 50% of that cost was actually already taken up by the hosting platform fee, which, as I'm sure you know, can be very expensive. Yeah. And then we were also paying 7 people with that. And we also decided to give away some proportion of the profits to the NHS, which we thought also would be a nice touch. So for us, it really worked. And what we've now devised is a format that we can actually roll out whenever we like, and I think everyone seemed to enjoy it.
As I say, that as we all work in events, all looking for new models. I don't know that'll certainly be of interest. You mentioned freelancers, and obviously the events industry has a huge number of freelancers, very similar to your own sort of TV media in industry. What are the challenges you're finding for freelancers?
So I know that telly in particular and the entertainment industry has been hit hard, but I also have hope because we work in a fantastically creative industry, and I think that is really shining through now, where people are really thinking about how they can redo things, how they can do things differently. But I think it's super important to support our freelancers and to think of different ways of doing things.
I was going to say that's again, looking at the positives. I imagine it's one of the positives I've drawn from this whole experience is the fact that I'm a firm believer the event industry is part of the broader media industry.
Absolutely, very, very linked.
We are therefore by our very nature a creative industry.
And I think that's really important for people to explore and have a look at. You know, there is a whole community of freelancers who are fantastically creative, who have so much to offer, an enormous skill set, and are ready to evolve and do whatever you want them to do in the way that can be done during this times. And it blows my mind actually how amazing people have been at going, you know what, we can't do it like this, i.e., you know, a big stage and, you know, the Dorchester, you know, grand ballroom or whatever, but how can we do it in another way? And this won't replace, and it shouldn't replace, I hope, these lovely live events. I mean, there's nothing nicer than a live event. I mean, I love it, standing at a podium and, you know, I've got my audience, I'm there.
So thank everybody. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. And as I say, please do log on for our final two in this series, and we'll speak to you very soon. Thanks a lot. Cheers out.
We absolutely will. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.